a bridge and elevate, uplifting women, connecting communities.
Welcome to Be a Bridge and Elevate, where we uplift women and connect communities. I am Tanika Cherie.
And I'm Ramonda S. Thank you for joining us today. Today we are going to discuss what it means to lower your standards. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of me just to say it, lowering your standards. There's so much conviction there.
Yeah. So when I think about lowering our standards, I'm like, okay, like where? Because you can lower your standards in many ways. You can lower your standards, of course, relationally, but you can also lower your standards as far as your career.
Yes.
Lower your standards, like even in your education, because you don't want to push yourself. So what are some other ways we lower our standards, do you think?
I think we lower our standards when it comes to education. I think we do that sometimes with our jobs. So how many of us are actually working at the job that we dreamt about when we were little kids and you always said, yeah, I'm going to be this when I grow up? Is that what you're really doing right now? Did you lower your standards, or did you just get to a place where you thought, well, this is as good as it gets and this is my new normal, this is my standard now, and change what your standards were to fit what reality is?
Well, then I also think about what are the consequences when we do that, when we lower our standards. Like relationships, when we lower our standards, then we find ourselves in predicaments and situations that we could spend years trying to dig out of, you know, because
Trying to undo.
Hit
the delete
just because we didn't want to be alone, or you didn't see my face on that one. I actually met one of my customers yesterday, was sharing how her daughter is getting ready to get married and how difficult the soon-to-be family member, you know, is because they wanted her to go to school for law, but she wanted to be a teacher, which is what she is now. So they didn't pay for her college at all.
Whoa.
At all. So she didn't lower her standards, you know, at all. It's, again, I guess her standard or her expectation of what she wanted was to be a teacher. Now, the consequences of her setting her standard, because there can be good and bad consequences of you having higher standards. Even some women and men may not be married right now because they've set in stone, oh, this is what I need. These are my expectations. And in this case of this young lady, the standard that she set for herself, she's living her dream of being a teacher. But unfortunately, the negative side of that is the fact that she and her new husband now are having to pay back, you know, the school loans, whereas the family financially they're able to, but because she didn't do what they wanted her to do, my quotation fingers, she's left, you know, with the bill. So setting standards, it can be a good thing. But it can have positive or negative.
Well, what about
effects,
this?
right?
What about setting standards with the people that you allow in your life? What about setting standards with the people
and boundaries?
Boundaries, yeah, standards. Standards and boundaries, but the boundaries are a little bit different to me because I think of standards as, okay, well, in order to be a part of my life, you need to do X, Y, and Z things or not do X, Y, and Z things. So, for example, I have some friends that occasionally like to partake in recreational activities that aren't exactly legal. I won't go into who they are, what they're doing, but they're not exactly legal. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. They're choosing those choices. You know, they're deciding that for themselves. But do I disqualify them as a particular friend, or do I run the risk of saying, you know, hey, they could be a really good person at heart, but I don't want to be around them because they do X, Y, and Z. Well, then at that point you decide whether or not they're going to be friends, and then that's when the boundaries kick in. You know, you have to say, to what extent do I allow them to be a part of my world? But they can still be friends, but you're friends in box A. You get this set of range.
Them by then.
You get this set of range.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, we can have standards, but within creating standards, you also have to create boundaries in each set of standards that you create as well.
Do you think that we also set standards health-wise? When I see people who may eat healthier than I do, who make a conscious effort, you know, when they're picking out their food or they're at a salad bar, whichever, they have set a high standard for themselves, saying, I'm not going to put poison in my body. I'm not going to do X, Y, Z for whatever reason. It may be heart health, it may be weight loss, it may be because of medical reasons or whichever. But when I think about standards, you know, that's one of the challenges that I have. you know, I need to start setting a higher standard for myself. Where I work, the businesses around us are always bringing us snacks and cookies and things like that. And
Temptation foods.
it's ridiculous. I don't know why people don't think to bring you fruit baskets. I don't know what it is when there's a pitch in. And so, you know, Subway dropped off mint chocolate chip cookies yesterday. Like, that's not fair. And so, you know, and so not only are you, when you're setting a standard for yourself, it's already challenging, but it's even more difficult when you have outside influences coming in and saying, here, it's just one. It's just one, it's one cookie. Oh, it's just one drink. Oh, it's just, come on, here. You know what I'm saying? We can set standards, but sometimes we can be influenced and tempted by other people to lower our standards because that's where they are. Right.
But guess what? When we set standards and then we lower our standards, people around us will remind us that we set a standard for ourselves that we're not living up to.
But they'll help you. They'll help you make the mistake, and then they'll be like, yeah, but you, church girl.
I thought you were, or this and that and that. And so I've seen it too many times where maybe your standard is on Fridays, I maybe go to a certain restaurant for lunch and I eat healthy. Okay, well, if Monday through Thursday you had a 3-piece and a biscuit every day, and then all of a sudden you want to try to be healthy Friday through Sunday, people are kind of looking at that like, well, wait a minute, you're sending mixed messages. So when you set standards for yourself, be ready to commit to that. And it's not to say that you won't make mistakes, because we will. I do. But it's to make sure that, okay, well, is this realistic for me?
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna ruffle the feathers a little for the faith community, but one of the frustrations I have is the fact that sometimes, you know, people make a mistake who are believers or whichever, or you know, they don't make smart choices, find themselves in places that they shouldn't be in or whichever, and then the world or whatever want to say, see, that's why I don't want to go to church. Look, that's why I don't want to be a Christian, because you X, Y, Z. Your problem is the fact that you let them set the standards when the standard is supposed to be Jesus, because all of us fail daily. We fall short. And so if you're looking at me, you're going to be disappointed, because as much as I try to make that mark each day and I do better, you know, we still make mistakes. You're gonna see me eat a chocolate chip cookie. It's gonna happen, because that's just the one.
Give me those Oreos.
It's gonna happen. I have 2 sons, and all the while with them growing up, I do actually, if I make a mistake, or if I was wrong as I'm correcting them or saying something, I come back and I own it. And to me, part of parenting is showing them that I'm not human, I make mistakes, but how I correct it, how, you know, God views it, or, you know, how I'll go back and be like, you know, this is what mom did and I have to ask for forgiveness. You know, you have to do that. If you don't show other people, especially your children, you know, how to walk and how to just be real, you know, with life, then how are they going to know?
Don't forget to order your copy of The Mornings After, From Grief to Glory, a collaborative work including Tanika Cherie, author, speaker, motivator.
But setting the standards is something like personal, just even within yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have standards for yourself, how can you put those on other people? You know, and when we do, you paint pictures of people of what you think they should be, do, and feel based on what your personal standards are. And when you do that, people are going to fall short every time.
Well, I can just think of, you know, men and women, again, who are in high positions in office, or who are pastors and ministers or whichever. When these humans make a mistake, you know, the world is there to stone them. They are men. It's just that instead of
full of rocks.
Right, but it's just instead of, you know, the fact that these people get to be home every day and work through their marriages and work through their struggles or whichever, just in privacy with their spouse or with their family or their congregations, whichever, it's on TV, so it's broadcasted. Pastor Jeffrey Johnson at Eastern Star Church, I'll never forget this. One year he said, if they could put a huge screen in the church right now and everyone's sins would be flashed across the screen, he said he'd be the first one to run out. And that right there, we all thought that was awesome, because he was being transparent. Shame on everyone who seems to act like we all have to walk around like we got it all figured out. We don't have it all figured out. And if we did, then Ramonda and I wouldn't be sitting here today having, you know, a real conversation just about life and living and setting the standards.
let's talk about women who are in these professional environments and their work environment sets the standard for how they're supposed to appear. You know, what can they say because you represent that business, right? But where's the boundary between representing the business and erasing who you are and your personal stand? Yeah, losing yourself for the sake of the image of the business.
Well,
where do you draw the line?
I deal with a lot of racism where I work, where as far as like where I'm located. And so oftentimes customers will say things or make statements and things that they absolutely should not say. And as a woman of color, I have to, you know, be very tactful, and I'll kind of, you know, laugh it off, or I'll kind of say something or whichever. And I realize that they're not necessarily trying to be offensive. They're ignorant and they don't know any better. But the way that Tanika responds between 8 and 5 or 9 and 6 or whichever, you know, how I respond, it's the way that I'm supposed to respond. But how I feel, that after 5 o'clock when I could relax my tone or my voice or whatever, if I was like out and about and you made those statements, I still will respond. It would still be, you know, respectful and tasteful. I'm not going to just go out, I'm not going to do all that on you. But I may relax a little bit more what I say and call you to the carpet. In corporate America, you don't call people to the carpet. That's not what you do. Right. You know, and that's the thing.
Standard.
Right. That's not the standard. So it's funny. We do know how to behave, but you do have to adjust to just depending. Yeah. You know, what are we showing our children and what are we showing other people when we're just flashing off?
Sometimes we want to set standards on other people's time. And we have to be mindful that, yeah, even though I want you to be involved with this, that, or the other, okay, understand that they have standards that they have to meet in their own lives. And don't be offended if they have to, you know, reroute or detour or reallocate their time, energy, or resources in some other way that you may not be the priority. So just be okay with that. Be okay with the change and accepting somebody else's standards that they have for themselves.
You know, another area where I see that standards are not being set, some of our young women are allowing themselves to be disrespected. Some of them are trying to model what they see on television when these people are performers. There's no reason why I should be out in public and you look like you get ready to do you a BAT video. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Why are we looking like this? Now, after 5 o'clock, Tanika would say, "Why is we looking like this?" You know, or why is we doing that? And that one of the people who I absolutely love is Felicia Rashad on Cosby Show. Yeah. I love the way how poised she is, how she carries herself, how she can correct and check you and still smile and not once use a cuss word. So I think about my mother was the woman in my life who set the standard, but I can think of other women on television who played a role to me in my life, and Felicia Rashad was one.
I was watching a video on YouTube the other day, and somebody's grandmother, okay, for those who have seen the movie Friday with Chris Tucker and Ice Cube, there's this one particular character, Miss Parker, who really dressed a little bit risque for someone her age. And I saw
Was she the grandmother? She was the neighbor across the street.
She was the neighbor across the street that had to be 40-something.
That was watering the grass like she couldn't go call her son.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
So I saw this lady on YouTube that really reminded me of her because she was, you know, a woman that had a little bit of age on her. And she was demonstrating how you can turn a regular swimming suit into a thong. And she proceeded to show us this on camera and her assets. And for everything in me, I saw one of the comments in there that said, "Whose grandmother is this?" And the scary part about it is that in a lot of ways with today's society and everything is just out there, the standard is no standard.
And the less standard you can have, the more likes you're going to get, the more
outrageous and unrational or irrational the behavior is. And to me, that's one of the things that erodes the fabric of our society, especially as women. We're up against enough as it is. Why do we have to lower our personal standards to be accepted by other people? And what is their acceptance to us? What does that mean to us? How does that add value to us?
What I don't understand is that I don't necessarily see our young men showing more and doing more. You know, the young men, they still the way they are, and we're just showing less and less and less and doing more and more and more. And the young men are still just watching and observing. Like, why? my question, or what advice or suggestions would you give to them on how do you set a standard? What if we have a young lady right now who's watching this to say, I don't want to be like that. That's not who I am. You know, how do I set standards for myself if I want to change, is my question to you. And then secondly, what if I'm around other people and we cool, they're my friends, but they don't have any standards. How do I get them to set standards?
One, making the decision that you do want to change. Because let's be honest, some of these women out here are wilding out and they don't want to change. They're perfectly fine with this crazy behavior.
And we're not judging, right?
No, that's just their choice, right? But you have to first decide that you do want to do something different. Once you decide that you want to do something different and be something different, I think the next thing you have to do is make little changes. You decide that, okay, well, you know what? When I go to the grocery store, I'm not going in my pajamas and flip-flops. I'm going to actually put on, you know, at least a T-shirt and some
And my
jeans.
house shoes. You're right.
Yeah,
Yes.
maybe not go to Walmart in your hair scarf. Little things, just little things. It doesn't have to be over the top. It doesn't have to be super glam. But as you make those little individual changes, you will begin to see that you respect yourself more. And in respecting yourself more, people around you will begin to reflect that same level of respect that you show for yourself.
I used to live in Indianapolis, and I was at the Indiana Black Expo, and it was the year that Tupac was there. So the modeling agency, we had a suite at a hotel, and we found out that Tupac was going to be there. He was on the 23rd floor. So myself and another young lady decided we were going to find Tupac. And do you know, we found him. We knocked on the door and we were like, is this our suite? And they were like, no. And we was like, oh, we know that's them. So we went back and knocked again. Tupac comes out, takes a photograph with us, and goes back in.
Oh, wow.
I say that to say that year I was first runner-up in the Miss Indiana Black Expo pageant, and you have to be very careful how you carry yourself and what you do. In the photograph, I didn't realize it, Polaroid camera, Tupac had a blunt in his hand, and he had his arms around us because I wasn't doing anything wrong, but it's just that I've
The
never,
appearance.
yeah, it's the appearance. I was 17 or 18. I know daggone well you can do it if you're 30, 40 years old, still trying to hang with your daughter who's 20. Those consequences may not happen today, but tomorrow comes.
Tomorrow does come.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today on Be a Bridge and Elevate. We are here to uplift women
And connect communities.
communities.
I am Tanika Cherie.
And I'm Ramonda S. We'll see you next time.